any type of debris, surface debris is collecting. I think of a lake like Norris Lake up here in East Tennessee. One thing I did not mention before that I always do with a jig, you can see a little bit with that weed guard that it's kind of fanned out some already. As you can see, it's already fanned out a little bit, but that's something I'll do while I'm fishing. It's kind of fan that weed guard out and try to make it, flatter and a little bit wider, which is going to, even when that jig wants to roll a little bit, it's going to kind of help protect that hook. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and we are getting to that fun time of year. Man, I have said it a lot, and I'll keep saying it as long as I bass fishing. I love the month of March. I do. I look forward to this month. The other 11 months of the year, from April all the way back around until February, I'm excited about the month of March coming around because I get to fish the way usually I like to fish. And it's always a big month in bass fishing. There's a lot of big events go on, and yeah, it's just a fun time of year to be out enjoying creation and watching spring and watching everything come back to life again. So the technique of the month for the month of March. Last year we talked about, kind of the way I won the Classic and have done well in other springtime events and fishing shallow offshore places, places that are, kind of, I don't want to call it ledge fishing, but structural elements that are away from the bank, just not very deep. Early in the year, they're following those fish out of that migration, and we read so much about a lot of different lakes and people pre-spawn targeting fish on channel swing type banks. But this year, I kind of wanted to go complete opposite of that and really talk about something that happens a lot, especially if you're on a body of water that's rising. A lot of ours do that here in East Tennessee this time of year, and they do that across the country, different places. It could even be, in Texas based on rain, or, up north or river systems with water levels rising with spring rains and different stuff. I just feel like across the country, we deal with a lot of rising water generally in the springtime, just, more rain and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of time you're dealing with rising water. It's not always the extreme rises you'll see on a place like Lewis Smith where, it may rain an inch and the lake comes up 3 feet kind of deal. But you do see rising water a lot this time of the year. And if you catch a little bit of warm rain with that, man, it can be just phenomenal fishing. Fishing those run-ins and those type of places can be really, really good. And these two baits that I showed you in the pick two more are baits that are very well suited for fishing in a run-in. And run-ins and trash piles are kind of go hand in hand to me. So I named this video, or this technique, for what I want to talk about today, is trash daubing. Okay, that's what we're going to call the technique of the month for March, is trash daubing, because that's what these two baits here do really well. For one, we've got that Terminator 1/2 ounce Pro Series spinnerbait, the double Colorado, like I talked about, kind of that exaggerated Colorado 1/2 ounce. We've got a boot tail swim bait there on the back of it, chartreuse and white, something that's going to show up in that dirty water if you've been having some rising water with that. And just a quick note on that spinnerbait, most of them in dirty water, I like a silver front blade and then a gold larger rear blade. That combination is, tried and true and just can't really go wrong with it. The other is that Terminator jig, Pros jig, and this one is a 3/4 ounce, which when I am, really, really focusing in on flipping those trash piles, trash daubing type stuff, I'm going to have a 3/4 ounce rigged up. If I'm doing this a lot, I'm probably going to have a 1/2 and a 3/4 rigged up, because there'll be situations, maybe I come to a lay down where I don't need that 3/4 ounce. I can pick up the 1/2 and fish that. But when I get back in there and I'm really punching through that stuff, that 3/4 is what you want, because it's just more efficient. You're going to get the bait through that stuff more often. So what are you actually looking for? You're looking for places where any type of debris, surface debris, is collecting. I think of a lake like Norris Lake up here in East Tennessee. I have probably used this technique on Norris the most here in East Tennessee. Douglas would be next. For whatever reason, Cherokee doesn't get a ton of it. just the way the runoff and the water coming in, for whatever reason, you don't see as much of it there as you do some of the other lakes. Like Fort Loudon, you'll see it on occasion. Watts Bar, you do see it some. It's just funny how different lakes you seem to see more of than others. Seem like the headwater lakes are where you certainly get more debris and more trash and stuff floating into those. None of those compared to the amount that I have fished on Lake Cumberland up in Kentucky. It is the king of this technique, in my opinion. Gets a ton of trash piles and stuff in the water there. Lewis Smith, I've mentioned it down in Alabama. It gets a lot of them. But what you're looking for, this stuff is gonna gather or collect back in, some of it in pockets especially. It seems like main lake pockets get it a lot. It's like your big creek arms and your big river arms is where this stuff is gonna wash down from. It's gonna start washing into the lake. Then when you get a little bit of wind, it's gonna kind of push that back into those coves and pockets. Some of it may naturally come in from those places, but a lot of it's going to come down the main flow, so you're really not going to see too much of it in the head of the river, in the head of the creek. You're going to see it in those pockets that are off to the side. So this stuff's going to come down that main channel, then the wind's going to blow it one direction or the other, and that's where this stuff is going to gather. A big thing with this technique is finding the right amount of water underneath of some of this trash. I've been to some of those places where you pull back into the back of a cove, and it is, honest to goodness, 100 feet, 200 feet to get to the back of the pocket, to where where the water runs out back there. You're a couple 100 feet, 100 feet from it. It would take a two-hand cast at best to be able to have a potential to reach it. And out here on the outside edge of it, where the trolling motor hits the first log, it may be 15 feet deep, it may be 20 feet deep. It's really deep water under that. I don't catch very many fish in those type of places. I'm not saying there aren't fish in there, because there almost certainly are, but they're really hard to get to, as well as if you take a pocket that's like that. That it's a pocket that, let's just say, covers 2 acres. If there are, for every 2 acres, let's just say there's 5 bass. I don't know if that's good or not, but we're just using this for an example. So in this 2 acre pocket, 1.5 acres of it's covered in debris, and there's 5 bass in there. They're going to be hard to find. If you go to the next 2 acre pocket that also has 5 bass, and you only have 1/4 acre, 1/8 of an acre that's covered with debris, there's probably going to be 3 or 4 of those 5 bass in that little small area versus this other 1.5 acres that's going to have them all spread out. So finding those places that are a trash mat or something, a debris mat that is much more confined, as well as being in shallower water, is going to help your chances as an angler. Those fish this time of year, water's warming. Hopefully, this is a very good pattern on a sunny day. Not quite so good on a cloudy day, cloudy, windy. That's not the day you want to be doing this. You want a bright, sunny day. Breeze is fine, but you don't want a cloudy day when you're going thinking that a trash jobbing is going to be the way to fish. And that's because that sun, a wind or no wind, it's going to allow that stuff to warm up that much quicker, and those fish are going to pull up underneath of it. And if you get back to those places where it's only 2 or 3, 4 feet deep underneath of that debris, that water is going to warm considerably faster than that stuff that's out here sitting over 5 or 10 or 15 feet of water. I could count on one hand the number of fish I've caught out from under a trash mat that was 15 feet deep. There's no telling how many I've caught under one that was that deep. Okay, so you want to get back into that stuff where it's shallower, where it's more confined, is really, really what you're looking for. Honest to goodness, one that's the size of the boat or the size of a couple boats is way better than one that's the size of this garage. So those more confined trash mats, those are the ones that you're going to be more productive in. Again, just a couple things final on that bait. Like I think I had already mentioned, that 3/4 ounce does really good, especially if you're having to make longer pitches, get it back into that stuff and get it through there. And at that point, it's truly just about efficiency. Sometimes it's trying to weave its way down between the logs. Sometimes it's actually like that sawdust-like stuff that's on top of the water that wind and wave action can really, kind of pile that stuff up, and you got to get it to get through that. If it's really thick stuff, maybe you need to go to a punching type setup, a 3/4 ounce weight or a 1 ounce weight. you know, on a Texas rig. But I like a jig best this time of year. I just like the profile of it, and I like the way that that hooks the fish really well. It's just a dynamite setup. One thing I did not mention before that I always do with a jig, and that's in this situation or any other, you can see a little bit with that weed guard that it's kind of fanned out some already. When when it's in the package, it's going to be more almost round. It's going to kind of all be tucked there together. But you can see it's already fanned out a little bit. But that's something I'll do while I'm fishing. Is kind of fan that weed guard out and try to make it flatter and a little bit wider, which is going to, even when that jig wants to roll a little bit, it's going to kind of help protect that hook that way. So always fan your weed guard out on your jig like that, and it's going to help make it a little bit more weedless. So if you've got rising water and you're looking for a great way to catch them on a lake, especially a headwater lake, get back in those areas, look for that run in, look for that stuff that's not necessarily real pretty, but if it's creating a mat on the surface of the water and it's not too deep, there's a good chance there's going to be some bass under it.